Hello, welcome to this quick presentation about Harvard referencing and plagiarism. My name's Richard, I'm from Library Services. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what Harvard referencing is and why it's important. The reason it is important is because of plagiarism, possibly the worst thing that you can do at Newcastle College academically. Plagiarism means the submitting of somebody else's work, words, ideas or images as your own without acknowledging the true source. What does this really mean? It means you've got to be really careful in your assignments that they can't accuse you of copying. So here's your problem, folks. You've got people like me from the library and you've got your lecturers saying you really must use their books and their magazines and their websites. And folks, you've got to. As part of your research, you've got to show you understand what the experts in your field say. Right? To use Sir Isaac Newton's words, you are building on the shoulders of giants. You're adding to the knowledge that there is out there about your particular subject. And the only way you can do that credibly is by referring to what the masters have already discovered. Trouble is, if you don't do it in exactly the right way, they're going to penalise you and say that you're copying. So you've got to play by the rules. Now the rules is this system called Harvard referencing. And it's this you've got to make sure you're doing in your assignments. So that yes, you're going to get marks for doing your research, but no, they're not going to say you're trying to steal that research. There's two things you've got to do. One of them's in your essay, a thing called an author date citation. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then at the end of your essay, you've got to do a separate chapter, which is what they call a reference list. And it's a complete list of all the books, all the magazines, and all the websites that you looked at to research that bit of work. Let me take each one in turn. This has got to form part of your sentences and part of your paragraphs as you're going along. And every time you've used somebody else's words, or somebody else's ideas, or somebody else's opinions, what you've got to do is write down as part of your sentence the surname of the person who published that work originally and the year that it got published, either on the page or on the web. Makes a bit more sense with an example. So I started this presentation today with a quotation. Yeah? Plagiarism is submitting of blah, 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 blah. Now they are not my words. So because they aren't my words, as part of my work, I had to write down the surname of the person who wrote that work originally, in this case a woman called Elaine Gardner, and the year that she published it, 2009. And because it's a word-for-word quotation, I got the page number as well. And they're looking at you doing the same thing in your assignments, if you've got any quotations like that. Second example works the same way. Elaine Gardner, 2009, offers a useful definition of plagiarism. Even though I've not used her words this time, I've used her definition, I've used her idea. So I've still got to do one of those author date citation things. I've still got to write down the surname and the year as part of my sentence. Now if you can get this right, they throw marks at you. This is higher level studentship stuff. This is what the people on the level 6 and level 7 courses have got to do. So you're doing that all the way through your assignment. Every time you use somebody else's words, somebody else's ideas, somebody else's opinions, you put in the surname and the date. Then at the end of your essay, you've got to do your reference list. Complete list of all the books and all the magazines and all the websites that you looked at to research that piece of work. One long list in alphabetical order by the surname of the writer or the surname of the webmaster. Now they really overcomplicate this. There's rules about the details you've got to include. There's rules about the order everything's got to be in. There's rules about the punctuation. To make life easier, over in the libraries, we've come up with these guides. And from the middle pages onwards, there's some worked examples of what it's supposed to look like if you've referred to a book, or a CD, or a DVD, or a beer mat, or what have you. So the idea is, you see how we've set it out in the little blue boxes here. You keep the format the same, but change the details so it's true to the book that you've looked at. So for instance, if we've got a title in bold, your title needs to be in bold. If we put brackets around a date, you need to put brackets around a date. If we start with a surname, you need to start with a surname. And these are the fastest, most efficient way we could think of trying to show you how this works. This might help as well. Some people find it easier to understand the system if they understand the logic behind it. So this is your logic. For anything you write down your reference list, you're always writing down 4 details in this order. You're writing down who wrote the thing, when it was published, what it's called, and where you found it. So if this is your reference list here, and you've got one book, one magazine article, and one website, it always goes who, when, what, where. So you start with the who wrote it, right? Whether it's Sherlock Holmes, or IMDb, or Barry Davis. Always goes surname first, and it's alphabetical order by that surname. After that, you're going to say when, so when it was published, either on the page or on the web, 2006, 2009. After that, you say what the thing was called. Whether it's called a funny old game, elementary detection, or the Internet Movie Database. And lastly, it's where you found it. Whether you found it in a book published by Heinemann in London, whether you found it in the Journal of Crime, or whether you found it at that particular web address, it always goes who, when, what, where. When it comes to writing your reference for this in your reference list, remember it's got to go who, when, what, where. So start with a surname, in this case close off. Right? Close off O, because it's always got to be surname first, and you've got to list your references, alphabetical order, by those surnames. You're going to get that off the front of the book. After that, you're going to say when it was published. Now you find that 2 or 3 pages into a book. Usually you find your title page, then on the back of the title page you see a page that's a tiny writing on it, and that's the other page that you need, called the bibliographical detail page, and you're going to find your year on there. Now if there's more than one date listed, the one that you put in your reference list is the most recent date that's there, the most up-to-date date that's on the page. Following that, you're going to say what, right? What the thing was called, the title of the book. And your titles you've got to do in bold or in italics to make them stand out. You can either choose bold or you can choose italics, but then you can't chop and change between the two. If it's like a second edition or a third edition, it will say on the back of the title page, you were second ed or third ed, and you write that in next. Then last of all, you're going to say where it was published, whether it was published in London or New York, what have you. So in this case, it's Manchester and published by Newdy Books. So at the end of your reference list, you're going to have Close Off Oliver, 2005, Naked, second edition, Manchester, Newdy Books. Now if you've used an idea or a theory from that book in your assignment, as part of your sentence, remember you just put in the surname and the date. So you just put Close Off, 2005. Journals work the same way, right? Still got to go who, when, what, where. So let's say in this case you refer to this journal here, the International Journal of Affection, and the article that you've used in your work is My Needs as a Woman, written by a man to hold me. Sorry, too bad. Just like before, who, when, what, where. So you start with a surname. Now last time we got the surname off the front of the book. If it's a journal or a magazine article, you've got to look on the article itself. It can either be at the start of the article or at the end. But it's still got to go surname and then forename. So in this case, it's going to be, hold me, Amanda. After that, you've got your when, right? So when the thing was published. That should be on the front of the journal. In this case, it's going to be 2006. Following that, you're going to say your what. So your article title, My Needs as a Woman, and the name of the journal itself, the International Journal of Affection. Then it gets a bit strange. Right? This is Volume 6, Number 5. So the rules of the game say you don't put the word volume, you don't put the word number, you just put the numerals. So this is volume 6, so you just put a number 6. It's issue 5 of volume 6, so you put a number 5 in brackets. You don't put the word volume, you don't put the word issue or number, you just put the numerals. Last of all, you want your page numbers, right? The page numbers of the article that you looked at. Now if it's 1 page long, you go P dot 34. If it's more than 1 page, you go PP 34 to 36. So at the end of your reference list, you're going to have Hold Me Amanda, 2006, My Needs as a Woman, the International Journal of Affection, 6/5, pages 34 to 36. And because the surname Hold Me comes after Close Off, alphabetically, this one will be number 2 in our reference list. Last of all, websites, the worst of the bunch. Problem you're going to have with these is you've still got to do a who, a when, a what, a where. You can't get away with just putting the web address. These are always difficult because the information isn't always obviously there. For instance, this one, BBC News article. Now nowhere on this page is there any person's name, either as a webmaster or as a journalist, to say that they wrote this page. But you've still got to put a who. So in this case, because there's no person there, you've got to go with the company that runs the website. So in this case, it's going to be the BBC. The theory is, whoever it is who wrote that, the journalist or the webmaster, must work for the BBC. So you're saying the BBC is the author, right? And you treat that like a surname. So that's part of what you're going to put in your assignment sentences. Next problem is going to be the when. Now I got lucky on this particular one because it was a news article that happened to be a date on it. And if you can find a date on the website, put it, because it shows how up to date your information is. But 9 times out of 10, when you do go on the website, you can't find a date at all. Often it's buried right down at the bottom. The foot of the web page, you can say page last updated on, and there'll be a date. But more often still, there's no date there at all. Now, if there is no date, what you've got to do in your brackets, instead of putting a year, is you've got to put the words no date, or n.d. Next thing, you've got to go your what, right? So what the page was called. And just remember, like all your titles, you've got to do with this in bold or in italics. Then to show it's a website, you've got to put the word internet. And the word internet has got to be in square brackets. Following that, you've got to type in the words available from, and then in little triangular brackets, you've got to put the URL, the web address. You've got to put the full web address that appears on the address bar in your browser. Right? You can't just get away with putting bbc.co.uk, you've got to put the full web address. So the fastest way to do that is right-click on the address line, copy it, and then paste it into your assignment. Last of all, again in square brackets, you've got to put the word accessed and then the day's date you went on the website. Now that makes sense, because obviously web pages change all the time. Go on the BBC News website today, it will look completely different to that one. So if you put the day's date that you went on that, your lecturers can double check your work to make sure that you've got your assignments correct, you've got your information correct. So at the end of your assignment, if you have used this particular website, in your reference list, you've got to put BBC 2007, BBC News, Internet, available from, the web address, accessed, and the day's date you went on the website. And if you've used an idea from that website in your work, just like before, you've got to put the surname and the date. Or in this case, BBC 2007. Because BBC comes before close off, and close off comes before hold me, this one's going to be number 1 in the alphabetical reference list at the end of your work. Right? So it's going to go BBC, then close off, then hold me. Sounds like the perfect Saturday night in to me. So let me sum this up then, folks. Right? Plagiarism means copying somebody else's work. This is taken really seriously, not just by this college, but every college and every university in this country. This is such a big deal right now, you have no idea. Which is why you lot have had to sit there listening to this rubbish today. You have got to properly reference your work, folks, because you're working at the same level now as people at Oxford, at Cambridge, at Durham, at the top universities in the country. So you've got to play by the same rules that they play by. At the moment, that's the Harvard system, which means you've got to do your surname and your date in your essay. At the end of your essay, you've got to do your reference list. Your who, your when, your what, your where, in alphabetical order. There are established rules about the sequence, about the detail, about the punctuation, and that's all laid out for you in these booklets here over at the library. Now, if we can ever help you out with these things, please do get in touch with us over at the main library and the Rye Hill campus. Thanks for listening, folks. Goodbye.